It's a pleasure for me to be here with you this morning to provide a briefing regarding the recent passage of this most devastating of monsters, Hurricane Beryl, on July 1st. The northern parts of Grenada, particularly the ward islands of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and a little known island outside of Grenada called Aileron, plus the northern parish of St. Patrick, my home parish, and other areas in the northeastern and northwestern parts of Grenada bore the brunt of the fury of Beryl. Madam Chair, Beryl hit us almost 20 years after the devastating strike of Hurricane Ivan, which destroyed Grenada to an extent that in quantifiable terms, we lost 200% of our GDP in the space of a few hours. And closely on the heels of Ivan, we had Hurricane Emily in 2005, again, doing substantial damage to our economy and to our people. Madam Chair, we are faced once again with the task of rebuilding, in some instances, from scratch. This recent catastrophic event makes clear to us, even to the doubters, that the climate crisis is not imminent. It is here, it is now, it is destructive. And it is more destructive for those who have done the least to provoke it. We, the small island developing and coastal states. Against this background, Madam Chair, we come to the point where about 98% of all buildings in Carriacou and Petit Martinique and Aileron were destroyed to varying degrees. Homes, schools, community centers, churches, government buildings, none was spared. Severe damage was done to our shoreline and our beautiful coastline, particularly in those two islands. The economy of Carriacou and Petit Martinique has been virtually obliterated by Beryl. So it's a question now of starting basically from zero, resetting. Boats, fishing equipment, mangroves, livestock, the entire agriculture sector and the marine industry, businesses, forests, name it. Almost everything in Carriacou and Petit Martinique is totally wiped out. Madam Chair, colleagues, excellencies, the increased regularity of these severe weather systems is taking a toll on the lives and livelihoods of our people. Our communities are deeply attached to the land and the sea, yet these repeated disasters are threatening to uproot our people. It is not just the direct impacts of climate change that cause displacement, but also the long-term economic impacts felt and the many ways in which climate disasters erode states' capacities to meet our people's basic needs. As I speak, Madam Chair, Grenada has commenced its cleanup campaign. Carriacou and Petit Martinique have to be rebuilt from scratch. This, colleagues, simply put, is a Herculean task for the resources of this government, bearing in mind that the hurricane season has barely begun. Excellencies, given the devastating impact of Beryl, our small and vulnerable open economy, the reality is that we will need all the outside assistance we can get. And this is where, Madam Chair, the investment conversation comes into the picture. It is a dialogue that needs our careful attention, deep thought, and a strategic approach to realizing workable solutions. In this regard, we need a nimble system to provide the necessary grant and concessional funding with minimal red tape following the passage of a hurricane or any other natural disaster. We find ourselves facing extremely high public debt burdens and are caught in a spiral web of a vicious debt cycle, constantly borrowing, often at exorbitant commercial rates, simply to recover with just little time before the next hurricane or natural disaster strikes. Further, it has now become unavoidable that we look ahead to building back better, with greater resilience and with an eye towards future hazards. Finally, Madam Chair and dear friends, it is now absolutely necessary that we become the architects of our own regional solutions, which seek to build collective resilience, including facilitating the mobility of people and offering protection for those who are displaced. We look forward to engaging with partners in this regard so that we can strengthen our adaptive capacities while we still can and while we are still here to tell our stories. This is and has become the most absolute and critical imperative of our time. I wish to add also that our case is not one of begging for mercies, but asking of the international community to take a collective approach towards a collective problem. We're also asking that many of the onerous conditions that are placed on small vulnerable states, which try to develop and diversify our economies, that a serious look be taken at the conditions that are imposed upon us and at the roadblocks that are placed in our way whenever we try to innovate and to find ways to boost our income capacity. So this is a call to action. This is a call to the conscience of the world to ensure that justice be done for and by these small vulnerable states. I thank you.